about 5 minutes of capsule lift. That happened in just a couple of minutes.
And it looks like we are starting to see the capsule be lifted out of the water. We can now start to see the heat shield. Dragon now in the air, the hydraulic lift being activated and will be utilized to center Dragon on the nest there at the aft end of the vessel. I love this view because you can see the state of the heat shield. It did such incredible work during atmospheric re-entry. Dragon Endeavour now placed into the nest of our recovery vessel, Megan. Here's our first view inside the Dragon capsule after they made their splashdown. I was just doing some quick math. We had splashdown at 9:17 p.m. Pacific. It's now 9:51, so just 34 minutes. That's like a pretty efficient recovery operation indeed.
See the cabin lights on the inside the Dragon are off as the crew patiently waits for the recovery forces to do their job and get them out of the water and, of course, ready for egress.
Dragon, I'm happy to see you safe and sound on board. Personnel are completing their final checks. Stand by for translation across the deck to the egress platform.
SpaceX Dragon copies. We'll be waiting.
And that translation that was mentioned is a physical movement of the Dragon nest, the view you're seeing now. The capsule itself will be moved further inwards into the recovery vessel, where there is a platform waiting. And you can sort of see in the middle of your view of Dragon, there is that nice square feature. That is the side hatch. When the Dragon nest moves into the recovery vessel towards that platform, it allows the recovery teams that are on that platform to perform the operations of opening the hatch. The teams you've seen so far have been responsible for the rigging and the operation of the hydraulic lift to bring the Dragon capsule onto the Dragon nest. Now they'll hand it over to the teams that will get the Crew-6 astronaut and cosmonaut safely out of the capsule.
Yeah, it's important to note that all 4 crew members will be getting assistance from the recovery teams while they exit the capsule. You know, it's the same process for any returning crew from a long duration mission. And it makes sense because returning to, you know, our environment here with gravity can really wreak havoc on our bodily systems and especially those that are responsible for balance and control. So we will be providing assistance, but I'm sure we will be seeing smiles and thumbs up along the way.
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons. Of course, we've been talking a lot about the operations, but really we should mention the science. Of course, the reason the Dragon is returning from space is because their mission, the Crew-6 astronauts and cosmonauts, was a 6-month expedition on board the International Space Station, an orbiting laboratory for science, maintenance, technology demonstrations. It's the lab that allows gravity to be taken out of the equation, and you can find some new and interesting things about many different parts of science: physical science, biological sciences, and of course human sciences. You can learn a lot about the human body, and that's very necessary for learning how humans adapt to space and, of course, returning from space to a one-gravity environment. Very necessary for understanding how to send humans further into the solar system, to the moon and to Mars.
So we're now standing by for translation of the Dragon capsule to the recovery platform. basically meaning that once everything checks out here, we should see the entire capsule move towards us. We'll get a different camera view on board the recovery vessel once the Dragon capsule starts to move, but it'll basically put it right up next to the platform that is basically right at the same height as the bottom of the side hatch. Oh, there we have our first movement of Dragon Endeavour making its way to that recovery platform.
Dragon, I'm noticing the cabin lights are off. I'm wondering if you had them off specifically for re-entry.
SpaceX Dragon, we did, and you turned them on us. We were enjoying the nice calm lighting. What do you turn it back off again? Good. We're enjoying the lighting. We have to see what's going on outside this way.
No worries on the lighting. Fine with the lights off. I imagine your re-entry was pretty amazing. Side hatch opening should be any minute now, and I think that's about it for me working with you all tonight. It's great to see you back. Steve, Woody, Sultan, Andrey, happy to have you back home safe.
And we're happy to be back, and we look forward to catching up with you again real soon. Take care.
It's an important note. The crew has the ability to toggle lights on and off, and turning them off during the re-entry phase. There are those windows that we've been seeing.
All right, Dragon, I know I said goodbye. I'm back, and I'm wondering if you can indeed turn the cabin lights on for the recovery team to come inside.
Absolutely, we'll take care of that. And they're on now.
So we'll be seeing those lights turn on here momentarily, but again, they've been off in this configuration, so if you're trying to imagine what the crew was experiencing during re-entry, it was with the darkness, but there are those windows on the Dragon itself, and through the plasma buildup, they were able to see some of the plasma come through the windows and really get to experience the full experience that is re-entering from space into the Earth's atmosphere, and just sit back and relax and enjoy it.
Yeah, that also makes sense given that it is dark out, and you know, for them to be able to, where possible, see the recovery operations happening outside. Yeah, same reason why you know, as kids we're not allowed to turn lights on in the car when mom and dad are driving at night because you can't see very well outside. So that makes a lot of sense. But we did ask them to turn them back on just so that we're able to help the crew egress. And once the side hatch is open, the flight surgeon will be the first person to poke their head in and just do a quick thumbs up scan of all 4 crew members to make sure everything is good. But what we're doing right now on the outside of the capsule, we're doing additional safety checks. We saw momentarily some of the recovery team, they had face masks on. This is personal protective equipment, or PPE. It's basically a respirator to allow them to breathe clean air. They're just going to do some additional sniff tests for any lingering hypergol vapors. Once again, the onboard propellants that we use, nitrogen tetroxide and monomethylhydrazine, are toxic if you know, we come into contact with them or we breathe those vapors. So just once again, ensuring full safety for the recovery team on board, as well as the crew as we prepare to open that side hatch. We want to make sure that none of those vapors are lingering.
Side hatch, if we get these views from the inside, we'll also be able to alternate from the outside, is now open. You see the recovery team is open and waving to the crew. First humans that the Crew-6 has seen on the ground in 6 months.
Looks like we got some fist bump action, thumbs up. Seems like the crew is in pretty good spirits after their journey back home.
We're not getting audio, but I am getting reports that on the recovery ship there was a big round of applause from all the recovery team on recovery vessel Megan as soon as that side hatch opened for the crew, congratulating them on a successful mission and successful return home.
So once again, this is the first time that the side hatch has been opened since the day that the crew lifted off from pad 39A. This side hatch is not utilized while they are on station. We use the forward hatch, or the hatch located at the top of the Dragon capsule, for ingress and egress to the space station. So this is the first time that the side hatch is open, and like you said, Gary, their first breath of fresh air since their departure. So we'll also see the SpaceX recovery team, perhaps they already installed it, but yeah, I think they did. It's a protective casing around the side hatch. As we mentioned before, we do reuse these capsules. This is actually the fourth flight for this particular capsule. So to help make sure that we protect the hardware, as well as the spacesuits themselves, we want to make sure that that side hatch has a little bit of protection. So there's a small piece that they put around the edge to help protect it. Looks like we're getting some initial photos of the crew's return while continuing to secure that side hatch. Make sure it stays in the upright position while the crew is making their way out. Again, we will be providing assistance to all 4 crew members as they egress, as returning to our 1G environment, our 1 gravity environment here on Earth can be difficult after spending so many months in space. Once again, this crew lifted off in very early March, so they've certainly been enjoying microgravity for a while.
It's important to note all the team members it takes to perform a successful recovery operations. We have specialized personnel out to drive the fast boats and secure rigging equipment, operate the hydraulic lift to bring Dragon onto the Dragon's nest and move it into position. Now we have specialists that are dedicated to understanding the Dragon's systems, successfully opening up the side hatch and knowing the insides of the Dragon vehicle to basically unfasten, unbuckle the 4 crew members from the vehicle and start bringing them out one at a time. We, of course, have medical personnel on board, with medical facilities on board as well, to provide standard checks and test the health of the crew, make sure they're feeling good. And then, of course, Kate, you mentioned there is a helipad on the recovery vessel itself and a helicopter stage. So after the initial medical checks, the crew will be able to get a very quick ride home to the Florida coast, where they'll hop on a plane and make their way back over to Houston for further testing and, of course, to see their families, who will be eagerly awaiting their arrival. It's important to note that Stephen, Woody, Sultan, Andrey will be getting assistance from these recovery teams while exiting the capsule. This is the same process for any returning long-duration crew members, as returning to the gravity environment can be a big toll on the vestibular system, responsible for maintaining balance and motion. So safety, again, is our #1 priority with this operation. You'll see the crew members helped out of the capsule one by one and assisted the few feet to the medical quarters aboard the boat. If you've ever watched crews return on a Soyuz, this is the same process when astronauts are carried from the capsule to waiting chairs and then carried to waiting medical tents. This is also a period where any time critical cargo can be recovered from the spacecraft. They're positioned right underneath the crew members, and they can be brought back into port relatively quickly. Once the ship and capsule return to shore, the recovery team will perform additional inspections before loading Dragon onto a flatbed truck at the SpaceX facility in Cape Canaveral for post-processing.
As part of the effort to make sure that there's a bit more room for crew egress within the capsule, we are currently detaching and removing the footrests that we saw attached to each of the 4 seats inside Dragon. This just helps to create a little bit more space and enable the crew to get out a little bit easier. We'll also likely see them put a small slide up against the side hatch, and that will allow the crew to kind of slide out a little bit to egress a bit easier. Yep, there's that slide.
It's like they've done this before.
Yeah, we've done it just a few times. We're now standing by for egress of the Crew-6 team. Very happy to see Steve, Woody, Andrey, and Sultan back on planet Earth. I'm sure they are also excited to come out, and as you mentioned, it's after the medical checks, they'll hop in the helicopter and go home, a quick ride. So I bet they're all getting really excited for the opportunity to see their families really soon.
And of course, the change of gravity from microgravity to 1G can be taxing on the body. So throughout that whole process, through the medical checks, through the helicopter ride, the plane ride, the crew will have facilities and will have the ability to rest through much of that journey. As of course, this has been a taxing journey for them, and they'll have well-deserved rest along their journey back home to Houston.
Varies mission to mission, crew by crew, but we usually see either the pilot or the commander egress first. So with this view here, Commander Steve Bowen is in that left seat, and pilot Woody Hoburg is in the seat on the right. To Woody's right is Andrey Fedyaev, and to Steve's left is Sultan Alneyadi. So usually it makes it easier if the center seats are vacated prior to the two mission specialist seats, but it really varies crew to crew. We did see them detach and remove the footrests from all four seats to also help add a bit more moving room within the interior of the capsule.
There's a series of checks, so it's not as easy as just unbuckling and getting out of your seat. The seats, of course, and suits are designed with human spaceflight in mind. So the seats are connected. The suits are connected to the seats via an umbilical that can provide communications as well as air, nitrox purge that the crew is able to breathe. It's a little bit more oxygen than your standard breathing air. And so there is some technical specifics to get them egressed. So it is quite a process. So we're just standing by for them to get out of their seats. Does look like Steve will be the first out. NASA astronaut Steve Bowen, the first to exit the Dragon spacecraft.
I think I see a big smile on his face.
Helped up by the recovery teams.
now being seated in a rolling chair to help move him back to the medical bay, where he will get a quick checkout with the flight surgeon.
And again, this is standard procedure.
We can see some applause happening on deck. Looks like our pilot, Woody Hoburg, will be the next to egress. For those of you that have just joined us, we are now standing by for egress of the remaining 3 Crew-6 members. We can now see Woody Hoburg making his way, pilot of Crew-6, making his way down the slide. Looks like some excitement, possibly some more applause happening off camera. Remaining inside are mission specialists Sultan Alneyadi and Andrey Fedyaev. Commander Steve Bowen has already egressed. Some more applause there on the deck of the recovery vessel. Dragon Splashdown just under an hour ago at 9:17 p.m. Pacific, 12:17 a.m. Eastern. So just under an hour ago, they made contact with the ocean surface, and here we see them now egressing and beginning the last steps before being able to make their way home.
That's right. The 2 NASA astronauts have exited the Dragon spacecraft and are now in the medical facilities as part of the standard procedures and checks necessary before they board the helicopters and take the flight back to shore. Of course, there are the 2 mission specialists left in the capsule. If they follow standard procedure, it should be Andrey Fedyaev that we see egress the capsule next.
Gary, you mentioned standard procedure. I think that's an important thing to note, that in addition to the teams rehearsing both joint operations, everywhere from pre-flight training to the things that they were doing in space to the things that they were monitoring while Dragon was on orbit and making its way home, everything is very carefully choreographed in terms of the process in which we execute these operations. So even from a recovery standpoint, you mentioned before that our recovery times from the first time we did this with humans on Demo 2, again using this same capsule. This capsule has flown 4 times now. Our operations have gotten more efficient, and they are documented step by step. And so, of course, whenever it comes to egress, there is a little bit of flexibility that if a crew member needs or wants to egress sooner than later, we can do that. But generally, as I mentioned before, we do try to vacate the 2 center seats first. We can now see 2 more leg rests being removed foot rests being removed from the seats inside the capsule, again, just to create a little bit more room.
Yeah, you mentioned the efficiencies, Kate. We're inside of an hour now, and this is from the moment of splashdown at 12:17 p.m. Eastern. It's now 1:14, or 12:17 a.m. Eastern, rather. So it's now 1:14 a.m. Eastern, and we're seeing the 3rd crew member egress. So we're just an hour, really, after splashing down that the crew is able to set foot on the recovery vessel. There's Roscosmos cosmonaut Andrey Fedyaev being assisted by the recovery teams onto the rolling chair. He'll also be positioned over to the medical facilities. Last remaining crew member inside Dragon Endeavour now is Emirati astronaut Sultan Alneyadi, completing 186 days in space.
Got some happy waves there from Andrey. More applause. And the last footrest being detached from Sultan Alneyadi's chair.
You can see SpaceX and Emirati recovery personnel positioned outside the Dragon capsule, ready to receive Sultan Alneyadi. Again, he is the last remaining crew member inside Dragon Endeavour.
And if he makes it out in the next minute, which it looks like he is, it will be exactly 1 hour on the dot after making splashdown.
Not bad.
60 minutes exactly. So once again, nominal operations are to assist all crew members to the medical bay. The return to gravity can be pretty jarring on the human body. So we slide them down a little Dragon fun slide, assist them into the wheeled chair, and roll them over to the medical bay. And just like that, the fourth crew member, 1 hour exactly on the nose since splashdown, has now egressed from Dragon Endeavour. Looks like smiles and waves and applause all around.
All right. All four crew members have egressed Dragon successfully. So now that Steve, Woody, Sultan, and Andrey are safely back home on Earth and getting checked out by the NASA medical teams and, of course, the international teams, we're going to wrap up our live coverage of their return. This all kicked off on March 2nd, 2023 from historic Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. After a successful liftoff and separation from Falcon 9, Steve, Woody, Sultan, and Andrey made a 25-hour flight on board Dragon to the International Space Station. Since arriving at the station, they spent nearly 6 months as members of Expedition 68 and 69, executing science experiments, spacewalks, and repairs while aboard the orbiting laboratory, actually more than 6 months.
That's right. And their journey home began about 18 hours ago on September 3rd when they closed the hatch to Dragon and undocked from the space station at 4:05 p.m. Pacific time. Then, after 5 successful departure burns and a phasing burn to line up their orbit, Steve, Woody, Sultan, and Andrey rested for a few hours before waking up to prepare for re-entry this morning. We jettisoned Dragon's trunk and performed our final on-orbit maneuver, the 16-minute-long deorbit burn, at 8:24 p.m. Pacific time, 3:24 GMT, and that is what put Dragon on its path home to Earth. The spacecraft re-entered the Earth's atmosphere and slowed its descent with successful deployments of 2 drogue parachutes, followed by 4 main parachutes, and with final splashdown occurring off the coast of Florida near Jacksonville at 9:17 p.m. Pacific time, 4:17 GMT. Following that successful splashdown, we saw the SpaceX recovery experts move in really quickly and prepare Dragon Endeavour for its lift onto the recovery vessel. And just almost exactly an hour following splashdown, we saw Steve, Woody, Sultan, and Andrey make their way out of Dragon and into the recovery ship's medical facilities, safe and sound.
So after the medical facilities and medical checks, they'll catch a helicopter flight back to shore where they'll transfer to the aircraft that will take them home. Steve, Woody, Sultan, and Andrey will take a NASA plane for the short flight back to Houston, and later Andrey will fly back to Russia and Sultan to the UAE. They'll be reunited with families to bring an end to the mission. It's been an honor and a privilege to share their journey with all of you as we continue in this new era of human spaceflight.
Return today marks the end of the direct handover that that we just executed after successfully launching the Crew-7 mission to the space station just a little over a week ago. It has been an incredible honor and joy to share this mission with the public. All the teams from SpaceX and NASA continue to work hard to keep America leading the world in human spaceflight. Continue to follow SpaceX and NASA online and on social media for updates for the very latest on crew and cargo flights to and from the International Space Station.
And we'll continue to share the progress of Steve, Woody, Sultan, and Andrey on social media as they travel back home. We also have a post-Splashdown media telecon coming up at approximately 11 p.m. Pacific, 2 a.m. Eastern, where leadership from NASA, the UAE, SpaceX will share a final update as we conclude this successful mission. So we'll say thank you one more time for tuning in and cheering on Steve, Woody, Sultan, and Andrey as they made their return back to planet Earth. From all of us at NASA and SpaceX, welcome home, Crew-6. So long.